Hey everybody, welcome back to this random journey. Today I want to talk to you about the do's and don'ts of starting to homeschool after your children have been in public school. If you're new here, I want to say hi, welcome. I'm so excited you've decided to join us today. We are here Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. talking about minimizing, about teaching, about just a random assortment of things because this is this random journey. And that's what this channel is all about, being us and bringing you along for the journey. So without further ado, I have a list of about 10 do's and don'ts, and they kind of couple together. I have my list so that I can stay on track. And there's a lot more to this list, and there's many more things that I could add. But these are the main ones that I thought was important and wanted to share with you. The first thing I would say is do not set up an elaborate homeschooling space. So whenever I first started homeschooling, I've been homeschooling for a year and a half now, I thought that I had to set up a desk with chairs, and they both had to have their own computer, and they needed their own notebooks, and they needed all these things in order for it to be like school. I quickly realized that was not realistic. And after the first year of homeschooling, we now have a homeschooling hub. And if you've seen some of our previous videos, this is our homeschooling hub. It is just a corner in our living room that has a cabinet that holds their workbooks, notebooks, and all those kind of things, pencils, scissors, you know. And I also have their portfolios are there. And my portfolio to keep track of all their hours and that kind of stuff is in that corner. So I definitely would say don't go into an elaborate setup for homeschool starting out. Just make it more relaxed and just have a hub where everything homeschool related is. And that could even just be in your normal office and not a corner in your living room. If you are privileged and have an office, we just do not have a space for an office. And so homeschooling has to be in our living space. So this is a big one. Number 2 would be don't expect for it to go smoothly. And what I mean by this is if you're anything like me, starting out, I was extremely stressed out. And so I thought that everything should just be good and we should just get into a routine and our day should just flow in this certain way, and it didn't happen that way. So my don't is don't expect for it to go smoothly, and also my do would be to allow time for your kids to adjust. So your kids are going to go from a public school setting, and now they're coming into your home where they're used to being able to be relaxed. And I think whenever we try to force that public school mentality onto our children in a place where they're supposed to feel relaxed, I don't think that's a good idea. I've tried it and it wasn't a good idea for us. Maybe it works for other people, and I'm sure it does. It did not work for us. So don't expect for it to be like school, and don't expect for your kids to want to just sit in one spot. Be willing to let your kids kind of tell you what they expect out of homeschool because they will have opinions. Be willing to listen to what they say, but don't expect for it to be like the public school setting. Expect for it to be more relaxed because it is your home and you do want to be relaxed in your home. Number 3 would be to don't buy expensive curriculum. Now, I have to say this was one of my big things. I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money on a curriculum that I just wasn't sure about. I researched curriculum, and I was so stressed out just trying to figure out what curriculum to get, and it was all expensive curriculum, and I was like, what am I going to do? And then I realized there's free curriculum out there, and the one that we chose was Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschooling, and we started with that. We started with the Easy Peasy All-in-One. And that's all I had at the very beginning. And with this, you have to remember that your kids' learning styles are going to differ. And I'm so glad I did not get a curriculum, because my son's learning style did not work with that curriculum for the basics. It's good for my son for history, science, what else we use it for? Oh, Bible's really good on there. So we use like the second part and we do group work. I'm glad I didn't spend money on that curriculum, and I'm glad I didn't spend a lot of money starting out, because I had to work with what my son could handle, what my daughter could handle. And so we now have a system with workbooks and supplementing with other things, and we can talk about that some other time. Number 4 is to don't be afraid to take breaks. My first year of homeschooling, I was strategic. I was like, we have to get 8 hours in or we're not really homeschooling. Well, that's not true. Your kids are going to be learning all throughout the day, even if you're not sitting in a designated chair saying this is the homeschooling spot. We learn in all different aspects, taking my kids to the park for PE sometimes and that kind of thing. Make sure that you are, so the do of this would be to have fun while you're learning. So take them to the park, do PE in the park, but you don't have to stop with just like PE and taking your kids somewhere for PE. In the beginning, that's all I took my kids anywhere to do was PE, and then everything else was sit at the desk and do your work. And there was a many days that me and both of the kids wound up in tears crying, because it's just not realistic when you're in your home. Maybe for someone it is, but for our family it just was not realistic at all. So taking your kids out of the home setting to learn can be anything from music, PE, art. Take them to a museum, teach them history. You can really take math, and you can go buy groceries and let your kids figure out the totals of the groceries you're buying. Or there's a slew of different ways, percentages or fractions. Take them to the kitchen and start to cook with them. My kids love hands-on learning, and I suggest you try it so that they're not just having their nose in a book all the time. I know that I learn best whenever I am doing something or I'm having to apply it to an actual life skill. And so I've noticed that my kids learn that way too. Now, all kids learn differently, and that's why you have to really assess what your kids' learning style is and figure out what works best. Some kids are bookworms and they love being in the books. Other kids just love getting their hands dirty and being hands-on. Both of my kids love hands-on. My daughter will also do the bookwork very easily, but she does like doing hands-on, like cooking, and she loves art. So make sure you don't forget to have breaks, and make sure you do have fun learning. Number 5 would be do not overload yourself, and make sure you do ask for help. I think my big issue my first year of homeschooling, I thought I had to do everything on my own, and I didn't think that I could ask for help or I could ask someone to take the kids so I could have a break. Once you go from your kids being in public school and having time on your hands, and maybe that's not the case for you, but I was a stay-at-home mom, and my kids would go to school, and I would have free time to be able to do the housework, go grocery shopping, pay the bills, all that kind of stuff that I used to be able to have free time to do. I no longer have free time to do that. And when I first started out, I thought that I had to magically homeschool my kids for hours upon hours, 8 hours I was trying to get in a day. And I also had to go grocery shopping, pay the bills, do all the house chores, and I went into an overwhelmed, stressed out mess. And I realized that it doesn't have to be that way. And I calculated it out and made sure that I had enough hours. If I did 5 hours a day during the weekdays, I would have enough hours to get my hours in. So that's our state regulation, is that you have to have a certain amount of hours. And so I had to make sure that that's what I would get. And that first year I was so stressed out and freaking out about it. And the furnace is going to kick on now, so I'm going to pause this and come right back. And the furnace finally shut off, so we can get back to our talk. where were we? We were talking about, don't overload yourself and do ask for help. So make sure you do that. And let's go ahead and move on to number 6. Number 6 is don't feel like you have to meet with other homeschoolers or co-ops. Now, in the beginning, I was like desperate to find other homeschoolers in my area. I was desperate to find a co-op. I was like, I have to have these things. And I almost thought that a co-op for homeschoolers did not exist in my town. And it wasn't until about a little over halfway into the year last year that I finally found the co-op and was able to get onto their Facebook page. And by that time, I had already kind of gotten to this mindset that I could do this on my own because I had already put into place, do put your kids in social settings and make sure to get them into some kind of community setting of some sort, helping out in the community, that kind of thing. So don't feel like you have to be with other homeschooling families. Yes, I think that that's great. We don't personally do that. It was, like I said, it just didn't work out that way for us. But don't feel like you, stressed out. I was so stressed out about it, guys. I thought that it had to be this thing, where my kids went to this group and met with these kids. And what we do, so if you want to know what we do, my kids have their social time at church. And so we go to church 3 times, sometimes 4 times in a week. And they are around kids their own age all the time. They have cousins, they have friends, they go hang out with their friends. So I don't feel like they're lacking in the social aspect, like maybe someone else who doesn't have that social environment would want to find a co-op. But we do not need that. We also participate in community events. My kids have done parades. They have went and picked up trash. They have done all kinds of stuff. So I think as long as you are giving your kids a good social ground, that you don't really need to find an outlet like finding other homeschoolers. But it is something that would be nice. And I do have them on Facebook so I can reach out to homeschooling parents for advice. So I think that is really important. To find a homeschooling group, yes, necessarily go and meet with them once a week or twice a week. We don't. So just do what works for you and know that you don't have to feel that pressure of finding a group. Okay, this one is big. And once I figured out this is number 7. Once I figured this one out, it completely changed homeschooling for us. So do not expect to stick to your schedule. Oh yeah, that schedule you've tried to nail down and you're like, we're doing math for an hour, and we're doing language arts for an hour, and we're going to do art for 30 minutes. It's not going to always happen that way. Be willing, and this is my do, make sure you do homeschooling around your lifestyle and around your life schedule. So, for instance, on Wednesdays, we have very, very busy days. My husband does the van for our church, and I also teach. So Wednesdays are a slower day in our house for homeschooling, and we are able to do that freely and not have a fear of going off schedule, because really we don't have a schedule, and I kind of let the kids pick and choose what they want to do each day. Granted, I do make sure that they are getting all their subjects throughout the week, but I let them choose. If my son says, Mom, I want to do math right now, well, I'm not going to say, well, no, you can't do math. You got to do spelling. Unless he hasn't done spelling all week and it's like Friday, I'm like, buddy, you got to do spelling. But if they have done other subjects through the week, I'm like, well, yeah, sure, buddy, you can go ahead and do your math first. And then he can move on to something else he wants to do. Making sure they hit all their subjects, but not being on like this strategic, you have to get an hour of math. triggered me. My husband's snoring over here. Okay, where was I? We got interrupted. There are days whenever my son, all he does is PE and reading. And that's because he struggles in reading. And so I'll say, hey buddy, you want to do Nessie? Which is his reading program. And if you want to check out the video I have on Nessie, which is a great program for reading, does cost money, but it is a great program. So I will link that up in the card. But sometimes I'll say, hey buddy, you want to do Nessie? And he's like, yeah. And he gets really into it. And so I sit him down in front of Nessie and he'll do like 2 sessions of Nessie, which can take quite a while. And then I'll say, hey buddy, let's do 4 pages in your reading today. And so because Nessie is so fun and it's like a game, he doesn't really think of it as homeschooling, even though it is. And then so we'll also do a whole lesson or 2 of reading, and then at night we'll sit down and we will read a book together. And so he'll literally have reading for 5 hours a day in one day because we've just packed all that in there. Now, I will say that if we do that and we do like a whole day of reading, the next day we will focus harder like on math. So you have to balance it out throughout your week. But don't be stuck to a schedule. I mean, don't feel like you have to be like, we're doing this and we're doing that and then we're doing that. Because every time you will get off schedule and then you're going to be like, I failed. And that's how I felt. That's how I felt in the beginning. I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I wasn't doing anything right. I don't want you to feel that way. If you're just getting ready to start out and you just brought your kids from public school and you're already stressing out enough, don't stress out about the schedule. I mean, it's something you shouldn't have to worry about. Number 8, do not compare yourself to other homeschooling families. There's a lot of families on YouTube that you can check out, and I did that. I researched, and you can look at the way I homeschool, but not every way is going to work for every family the same. So the way that works for me might not work for your family. So don't think that just because it worked for one family, it's going to also work for you. Make sure you do what works best for your lifestyle. So if sitting down and having your kids sit at a desk at the kitchen or sitting at the kitchen table while you're making breakfast works for you, that is awesome and I applaud you. It does not work for us. I have to sit down and eat breakfast with my kids. It's just the way it is. And usually we start our day out with breakfast and they get to watch whatever show they want on television. I say television, it's like Netflix. But anyway, they get to watch whatever show they want. It does not have to be educational. Because I want them to start their day and be happy about starting their day. And not feel like they have to immediately shift into gears into learning mode. I want their brains to start thinking creatively, and I want them to get in a more awake state before we begin homeschooling. So we do start homeschooling a little later, and we can talk about that like some other time. But just do what works for you, your lifestyle, and don't compare yourself to other homeschooling families. Okay, so number 9 is really important. It's don't forget to look up your state regulations. When you're first coming into homeschooling from public school, you will want to look up your state regulations. Now, this seems like it's scary when you hear the word regulations, and I was completely freaked out. Remember, I didn't know any homeschoolers, and so I knew nothing about regulations for Missouri or anything. And so I had to search and pull and find and research all myself to try to figure out where to find these regulations. Well, it's really easy. And there's a site, and I will try to link that down in the description for you because I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I will link that down in the description for you. It's really easy to find, and you just type in your state, and voila, you get the regulations. So make sure you do keep a portfolio no matter what. That is my opinion. I know some states don't require for you to keep a portfolio or keep track of your kids' hours. I suggest you do, just because on the off chance that someone would question you about what you've been teaching your kids, that you have proof that, yes, I'm teaching my kids, here's what I'm teaching them, and this is how many hours I've been teaching them. And I also take video and photo of my kids doing schoolwork. I vlog and talk about the way we teach and things we're using and things we are doing. And you can check all those types of videos out. I actually put a lot of them on YouTube as Teach Them Tuesday, and I'll link my homeschooling playlist for you up in the card. And last but not least, number 10 is don't give up. I almost gave up. Halfway into that first year, I almost gave up. I was pulling my hair out almost realistically, but not. And I was so overwhelmed and so stressed out because I was making it so much bigger than it had to be that I almost gave up. But the next thing, my do, is do pray. And I'm telling you right now, if it would not have been for prayer and for a lot of the support from friends and family, I would have given up. So I'm telling you, do not give up, and make sure you're praying and seeking the Lord for His direction for your homeschool. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to give me a big thumbs up, subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you next time.